Hi, guys, and welcome to the Scumbag Show. So, we have got a couple of things to run through tonight. Let's start off with the news. A recent article that came out, vaping behind the wheel can be prosecuted, police warn. Senior police officers have warned drivers using e-cigarettes who obscure their vision with huge clouds of vapor that they face prosecution and losing their license.
Yeah, this is like the thing with this is it's not really vape related. It's basically anything that obscures your vision while driving gets you a fine. And if you've got so many fines, then you're going to have to go to court, and then you could have your license taken away. So most of this is like even to do with cigarette smokers, because I think like on another article, it must have been Unilad, they spoke about cigarette smoking as well. So if you smoke with your windows closed and there's enough vapor that a police officer deems it unsafe, you'd also get pulled over for smoking. So it's anything to do with hotboxing your car or being distracted by your device, which was quite interesting.
We should just mention as well, this is just the UK. It's not South Africa. Yet.
Yeah, I think, it's Richard.
Well, I mean, I can see what's going to happen. The cop's going to pull some teenagers over. They're hotboxing their car. The cop pulls them over. He says, I'm going to give you a fine because you were, chucking clouds in your car. And the teenagers are going to look at him and they're going to say, do you even vape, bro? It's like, you can't vape with the windows open. It defeats the entire purpose of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like a challenge for me. I can remember when I went from the Nautilus to this first sub-tank, my first Kangatech sub-tank. And I can remember driving, taking a hit and not having the windows open because, I didn't need to have them open with a twist, and the egos. But when I chucked that first cloud from the sub-tank, I've quickly realized that this could be pretty dangerous.
If your windows aren't permanently semi-frosted by VG congealing onto them, you're not doing it right.
Do you even vape, bro?
I stopped because of the hassle of having to clean my windows every time I got home. So I stopped vaping with the windows closed, and then I now vape with the windows open just because I don't want to clean that up every time. It's very difficult to get in like the corners, which kind of gets annoying. And then sometimes I'm driving, I'm not even vaping, and I can't see anything at night because all of the VG buildup doesn't let the light come through. So everything's just kind of like reflecting off.
100%. I had another scenario where in traffic, heavy traffic, so back to back. And at that point in time, I was vaping on my Minikin and my Icon. So I was dripping and driving as well, which is probably a no-no. And, I opened the window wide and I just chucked this massive cloud out of my window, not thinking. And I blinded a guy on a motorcycle, passing in between the traffic. So he actually stopped and waited for my car to, catch up with him. And he said, please don't do that again, because, he really couldn't see anything. I said, I had no idea he was coming. I'm really sorry.
That's when you say,
so many times. Do you even vape,
You gotta live that scumbag life and cause multiple road accidents because of your hobby.
Oh, it's hilarious. And then, okay, so those deemed to be distracted by e-cigarettes. When we say distracted, we probably mean, not just the vapor from them, but also fiddling around with your wattage, right?
Anything. So I've done that specifically and almost had a car accident. which is why I was playing around with temp control. And as you know, temp control is quite fiddly with locking in your ohms. And it was like early morning, still like hazy from waking up. And then I was trying to lock my ohms, but then I noticed they were too high, and I was waiting for them to cool down so I could drop it again. And all in that fiddle, I didn't see that the cars had actually come to a dead stop in front of me, and I had to hit brake. I had to do an emergency brake pretty quickly. So I had like the wheels lock up and everything.
Now these days you have to adjust temp control via Bluetooth on your phone, so it's becoming quite a fiddly thing.
Yeah, so it says here. It says here the penalty of which can be disqualification, 3 to 9 points on the UK system, on your license, or a fine of up to £2,500. That's heavy.
That's a lot of dash call one shots.
Yeah, and then it said, if you are going to vape, I advise you. So they give us a little bit of advice. We lost Daniel again. They say here, if you are going to vape, I advise you that you open your windows and blow your vapor directly out, which is what I did, right? I did that.
Into the oncoming traffic, blinding the motorcyclist, who then dies in a gory mess against the onco barriers on the highway.
Directly out of my window. So I'm in my rights here. Just ensure that you are in full control of your vehicle before doing so. So don't look at your cloud. Yeah.
Don't worry about the motorcyclist next to you. That's his problem. There's Daniel back.
Hey, Daniel.
Sorry, man. Seems I've got internet problems.
No, it's cool.
We were just talking about the UK police saying you've got to open your window and blow out the cloud. Try not to cause motorcyclists to lose control when they come alongside you.
Yeah, and don't look at your cloud. Try and focus on the road. Yeah. This is the advice. I think that's pretty good advice. Okay, and then there's a bit of a thing happening here in South Africa. I'm sure other places as well. We've now dubbed it the name concentrate wars, or concentrate price wars. And I mean, it's just we always talk about how low can we actually go. I mean, I think Daniel, you said, they might get to a point where they start paying us to actually take it from them.
Yes. I think Rich mentioned that as well. It's like, at what point are they going to start bankrupting themselves just to put another person out of business? And I think it's kind of a short-sighted view, because you want to be the business that's here in the next 5 years. And if you just keep dropping your prices to the point where you're making no profit and you're just running clean, or you're running into a minus, how much longer are these companies going to be around for? Now, I'm not too certain how profitable selling concentrates at the current price on some of these websites are. But I can't think they could be making a lot if I look at what the wholesale prices are on some of the concentrates. Of course, you've got your outliers. Like some of these concentrates are 90 Rand for a liter. But it's not all of them, and it's not every single one that they're stocking, but some of these are quite cheap, where they can drop the prices down. But then you've got the ones like Flavora, Alpine, Strawberry, which we know at wholesale, I think is $7 for a 15 ml.
Jeez.
What I don't get is why the concentrates are all this, or well, mostly the same price through the range, regardless of which it is. Now, if you look at Flavora overseas, rich cinnamon is a lot more expensive than the average Flavora concentrates. Yeah, they're all the same price. I mean, Alpine Strawberry, sure, that is more expensive here, but it's the only one. The other Flavora they're on the same pricing level. Whereas if you look at the American vendors, they're up and down. There's like 3 or 4 different price tiers within Flavora. So I don't know what the guys here are doing, whether they're just averaging it out, making a bigger margin on the cheaper ones and a smaller margin on like the rich cinnamons. But it's kind of weird to me that they, everything in the range must have the same price. We see it a little bit in Inawera, where the shishas are sometimes a little bit more expensive than the rest of the Inawera range. But most of the ranges, like FA, TFA, so on, they're all one price, which is kind of odd considering that the wholesale price is very different, or can be very different.
So I know with Chef's Flavors, right? They also do Flavora, and this is one of the things that the UK guys were saying is like, how come everyone's paying so much money for Alpine Strawberry? Their Alpine Strawberry is the same price as all the other Flavora products. And one of the things that came out was that Chef's is willing to take a knock on certain flavors. So they're even willing to sell at a minus on certain flavors because they make so much like higher margins throughout the other range. So something like Alpine Strawberry is exactly the same price. So they've got a one price fits all model. And then the flavors that are, say, $2 a 15 ml, they make more money versus the flavors that are, $8 for 15 ml, but they're only selling it for $5. So they did speak about that they're willing to take knocks just so they can keep the pricing consistent.
There's psychology in play there as well. I mean, I won't buy Alpine Strawberry. I mean, who's going to pay 130 Rand for a 10 ml flavor, right? Now, if it was the same price as the others, I may well have got it. So I suppose the vendors have to consider that as well, that if one or two flavors are significantly more expensive than the others in the line, those are going to be the ones that sit on the shelf.
Yeah, well, they know that, like, one big argument is you're not coming in to buy one flavor, right? Especially because most of us probably buy for free shipping. So we'd pick up that flavor, but they'd make it on all the other flavors we have to pick up. And a lot of the staples are the cheaper ones. The ones that we all enjoy are actually much cheaper than, say, something like Alpine Strawberry or Rich Cinnamon. The shishas are also a lot more expensive wholesale. There's a few TFA flavors that are also quite high price versus their regular range. It depends, because their wholesale price for TFA is quite close to cost, if I'm not mistaken. They also make a bit of a profit, but because you're buying bulk, they can sell it to you quite closer to cost.
And I also don't think it's fair, to compare these flavor suppliers against one another, because of course each of them have a different procedure on how they are packaging and where they're getting it from, and where they're buying it from and who's packaging it for them and what rooms they're doing it. There's a different procedure, right? So we can assume that the guys with the lowest prices have care, or there's less care about that procedure. And the guy with the higher prices, not necessarily in each case, right, will care a little bit more about that procedure. I don't know. I guess it's better than having a situation where all of the flavor houses come to an agreement about what they will charge for Flavora, what they will charge for Cap, what they will charge for TFA. So I think I'd much rather be in this situation. Yeah,
I think that's quite interesting, because if you think about it, the first guys that came out, now I don't want to mention names, but let's say Company A, they were quite highly priced. I know about two vendors that were around, say, in 2013, 2014, and their prices were quite high, but they could do it because there's demand for the product, but there's not a lot of supply, right? And then a couple of companies came in and they said, okay, they're going to undercut basically them and sell for a cheaper price. And now what we're seeing is the third tier of companies coming in and undercutting the guys that were undercutting the other guys, So at what point, is a fourth company going to come in on the fourth tier and undercut the rest of the market just to get the market?
I think it's healthy, though. I mean, vaping is a new industry. It's got to go through these teething problems and, people finding market margins and what is sustainable for them over a 5-10 year period. What will the market accept in terms of pricing? So, I mean, it looks pretty brutal from the outside, but it's kind of the natural hierarchy of things just establishing themselves in any free market system. The only value is the value that people are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, If people were willing to pay 100 Rand for 10 Rand of concentrate, then that is what the market value is. It doesn't matter what the wholesale price is. So, and I think Zane made another good point about this, that regulation is going to cause a leveling off of the prices. I mean, if people are having to, work through ISO facilities and so on, and they are still having very low prices, then there's something not right there. They're either bypassing the system somehow, or they're just not implementing the regulatory safeguards that they should be. So I think that will be a good leveling factor. I mean, a lot of people are opposed to regulation, but there are good aspects that come from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do we even know how we compare our prices here in South Africa? How does it compare to? I mean, we know it's the service is great, and we know the prices are good, but are we the cheapest?
I think if I look at Bull City flavors, we're on par with what people are paying at Bull Cities, which I think some of the flavors are about 35 Rand to about 45 Rand. I think we're now on par with what they're paying.
I would say we're the cheapest in the world for FA.
Yes, definitely.
Cheaper than
I
the
can
UK.
look quickly. So I've got Bull City coming up when this internet decides to work. Okay, yeah. So their pricing for let me see when this actually loads properly. But their pricing is anywhere from 17 Rand to 35 Rand, depending on what product it is. So it seems like I think it's 17, yeah. So from what I see here, something like Flavorway Sweetener is 17 Rand, but Innerwear Sesame is 35 Rand. So I think if you got to factor in shipping, where it is now, where I see some of the Innerwear stuff going for 39, that's quite low.
Yeah.
Yeah, one has to factor in that Bull City are getting FW, TFA, CAP, Flavora, basically in the country of origin. So shipping isn't as big a factor for them as it is for our local guys. But now, if you ship in from Bull City or ECX or whoever, that's where it's going to hit you.
I looked the last time I did an order, just a mock order, to see what it would cost me, because I've looked, like, especially to get like Hangson flavors that we didn't have at the time, and I think it was something like $60 shipping to get it to South Africa, which is enormous.
Ouch.
And then you're gonna have to probably pay customs on it, which isn't, there's no duties for concentrate, but they do charge like a tax or some form of a tax on it, which isn't too high. Sometimes you get lucky and you get away with it. But the pricing for CAP for them is 29 Rand.
Yeah, so we're
basically bang on what we're paying.
Yeah, we're pretty good then.
Yeah. I think now, like with this recent price drop, we're almost on par with what they're paying, but we got to factor in what the shipping cost is, which is a lot higher.
All right. Shall we move on to gear?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first item that we're going to talk about is the Crius. Okay, so this RDA here, 24 millimeter RTA. The height is 38 millimeter. Material 304 stainless steel, gold plated 510 connection, adjustable airflow. It says there 4 adjustable airflow holes for more bigger clouds. So I wanna blow more bigger clouds. You know what I'm saying? High-tech DIY deck with zirconia white piece. Easy dual coil building, bottom feeding pin, detachable structure for easy cleaning. And then I watched a review from Vaping Vic. He said he felt that the airflow was noisy, but not exactly smooth. He also thought that the coils were raised a little bit high for it being a real squonking RDA. Have you guys checked any reviews on this?
I also watched Vaping Vic's one. Those seem like fair points, but it's quite amazing to me how similar the Crius dripper is to the tank. You don't often see that in a company that does both drippers and tanks, where the two share, for example, the same airflow, which this one does. That zirconia build deck is very interesting for me. To have one screw that secures all 4 coil legs is, I think, going to cause problems. I think I would struggle with that. I mean, it may work very well, I don't know, but I always prefer to have at least two screws, to have some sort of clamping system. I'm not sure how good the connections are going to be on that single central screw securing mechanism.
The disadvantages of that is, the ohm jumping around a little bit, and of course, uneven heating of the coil. So you could get dry hits easier. But yeah, nonetheless, I think if this does work properly, it would be a little bit simpler to build on. But I'm not 100% sure what that connection will look like. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Like I struggle sometimes, like especially with the bigger coils, to put them in the goon, which is like, so it's one of those where you have to put your coils like this to get it to clamp down. And I just see the same thing happening with this. It seems a little difficult, that clamp style that they're going for.
With a single screw, you've got to hold both coils in place while you screw that down. I find it a lot easier, like a velocity deck, where you can tighten 2 screws, get the one coil secure, and then work on the other one. Trying to keep 2 coils aligned and spaced properly, and screwing down one screw. It's simpler, but it's going to be harder, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So
I like the recoil build deck. I think that for me is like almost the magical, like besides a single coil, like in a double coil, dual coil setup, the recoil's got the best one, because it's almost like a velocity, but you screw down from the top, but you can do like one coil at a time and then snip your leads and put the other one in, which I find easier in terms of building.
That squonk pin is amazing. I mean, it's funny how people get conditioned into a way of thinking. Every single tank manufacturer who does a squonking RDA, will give you 2 pins, a hollow pin and a squonking pin. Now, OBS come up with the idea. They give you 1 pin with an insert, and if you want to squonk, you just take the insert out. And it's so simple, and you've got to wonder, why didn't others think of that?
Yeah, this is great. This is definitely innovation. I think Vaping Vic also said that, it's one of those things where, why hasn't anybody else thought about this,
I mean, like, I just thought about like how great that is, because often if I run out of batteries, I change devices, right? But I've already like got a certain flavor on my wicks, because I try to stick to like 1 flavor per RDA. And then I think like, I'd like to put the Hadley on my Entheon, but I can't because it's got a squonk pin in. And I don't feel like unscrewing the squonk pin, putting a new pin, and then having to change again. So that's really like a great innovation.
Yeah, I think it's influenced by companies copying each other. The first company comes out that gives you 2 510 pins, a bottom feeding and a solid one, and then everybody else, they don't think any further. They just say, "Oh well, that's how the first company did it. Let's just follow their lead." This is such an elegant solution. The only possible problem is because that insert's so small, you might lose it. But in terms of just leaving your 510 pin in the dripper and just taking the insert in or out, depending on whether you want to squonk or drip, I mean, that's genius. It's so simple.
Yeah, and then one other thing that I was thinking about here, if you look at I had a chat with the guys in the WhatsApp group around this as well. But now this is being sold as, of course, a squonker and a dripper, right? RDA. However, if you look at where, say, if you use this as a dripper and you're not going to be squonking, I think you potentially might run into issues here with uneven wicking, because in the middle there, if you look at the RDA, there's not a lot of space there for the juice to run through. A lot of people will argue and say, hey, there's enough space there for it to run through, but I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think, you would have to be careful how you drip here. See there, if you are going to be dripping on, so there's not a lot of space there for your liquid to run through. However, nobody has said, I mean, Vaping Vic certainly didn't mention anything about this. I'm not sure if he used this as a dripper or just as a squonker. Can you recall, Richard? He just used this as a squonker, right?
Sorry, he said he was just going to use it as a dripper. He didn't like using it as a squonker because the coils were too high for him.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, with that thick top bar, I think that is going to be a problem, that when you drip in, you might end up with it all going down the one side type of thing.
Mm.
This is where decks for me like the drop, where you actually don't have a central bar. You have it completely open in the middle. So whatever you drip through the drip tip is going to go straight down, basically land on top of the squonk, nozzle. So you're going to get very even wicking from that.
Yeah. So another device that we're going to be chatting around was the Blitzen. This is an interesting one. I actually had the luxury of trying this out today from Ohm Zone. So shout out there to Jean. So the draw on this thing is absolutely amazing. I also like the drip tip that it comes packaged with. It's not, it's not tacky looking at all. If you look at the device, I mean, this is just a 3D pic here, but if you look at the device in its, in its packaging, it really is a good looking RTA. What I like about it is the mesh style airflow, because that's the smoothest airflow you can get, in my opinion. So that over there, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but it's pretty good. So let me just go to some, so here I've got a picture of the bull deck, and it's a postless bull deck. All right. So of course the juice feeds from the sides here, and you'll see the juice slots at the bottom there. So it pretty much wicks exactly like an RTA. And I tried that out today. Of course, I just had a few toots on it, but it was good. Stephen asked me if it was better than the Zeus RTA, and I think it's a really good competitor. I think these two RTAs is probably the ones I would look at buying if I was buying. The difference here is the Zeus, of course, is a single coil, and this guy over here, it's a dual coil. But the chamber is so small that you can actually use it as a single coil as well. Of course, it's one of those things where it's trying to be everything, like Richard always says. Yeah. However, you've got the ability to do that. You can put in two smaller coils and run it as a dual coil.
How's the flavor on it? Because that interests me. Like I like the design, and I like the way the juice flows using gravity, and then having side airflow, which I dig, because I prefer side on airflow than bottom airflow. Yeah. But how's the flavor on it?
So This is a tough one for me. I think the flavor might come in better as the Zeus RTA. I did vape it in a single coil configuration, so I didn't have the opportunity to vape it in a dual coil configuration. So there was a menthol juice in the RTA that I was vaping it on, right? So I couldn't really on it completely open, the airflow completely open. It felt so airy that it felt like I was just breathing in a cloud that I randomly walked past. But when I closed the airflow off a little bit, the flavor did come out. But I mean, you're still dealing with an RTA here. The chamber here is, up to your mouth hole is pretty long, right? So I think, but because it's side airflow like this, the air or the vapor, it's got a shorter route to travel, because normally the airflow would be right at the bottom here, just above the 510, right? Now the airflow is here on the side, so it's a shorter route to travel. But I think it would be the flavor would be better here with the right build. If you put the right build in and you build the right coil, you're probably going to get a good RTA, a flavor RTA.
Yeah.
Is that even a thing? Is there a thing like a flavor RTA?
Yeah, the Org Vape Merlin, man, and the Org Vape Merlin Mini. So I've got like a little one, like this is the original Org Vape. And this thing's great. Like, it's got good flavor. It's restricted lung draw though, so it's a lot like the Hadley in terms of pull.
And the Merlin, are you talking about the RDTA or just?
No, the RTA. So it's the tank. Yeah, it's a tank. Just a bottom airflow, but it's a very restrictive draw, like the Hadley, which is like my kind of.
I watched the Vaping with Vic review of this tank, and it actually took me right back to the Merlin, because it's got a very similar wicking style. There's a wicking chamber where your juice enters from the side. You've got to put your coil down into that, put your cotton down into that chamber. And Vic started talking about you can't stuff the coil in there. You've got to put it in gently. When you look at it, you've got to see that the channel there is blocked with cotton, but it can't actually be blocked with cotton. Otherwise, you'll get dry hits. If it's not there enough, the disk's going to flood. And it just reminded me of why I only drip now. It strikes me as being a tank from early 2017, late 2016. I mean, even this whole idea of a postless deck where you've got to cut your coil legs to length before you install them. I mean, in drippers now, we've got the dead rabbit, we've got the drop, where you just drop your coil in. Whatever extra coil leg length is left over, it hangs underneath the deck, and you just clip it off. And this is the problem I have with RTAs. The way they work is just not conducive to quick and easy operation. Wicking this thing is going to be a nightmare. I can see it right now. I love the flavor on the Merlin, but to wick that thing properly, that you don't get dry hits and that you don't get flooding, it's tricky.
Yeah, man, I'm so done with RTAs. But this is interesting because it's a side airflow one, So there's some innovation there. The airflow is done really well. I can props to that because it's really smooth. I can see a lot of guys getting bored of tanks, looking for an RTA solution and looking at this device. And they probably, it probably won't be such a bad buy. If your first RTA was this, it probably won't be a bad buy.
Yeah, that 2 mil capacity is also Zophie Vapes. In her review, she was saying she has to fill this thing up so frequently. So she suggests swapping out for the bubble glass, the 5 mil bubble glass. That TPD 2 mil restriction is just crazy. I don't know why they've even done it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's this trend now for this bubble glass all over. You know, I think the Prince RTA or the Prince Sub-Ohm tank also has it. It's kind of Arb looking, you know.
Now you heard it here first, but I hate it. I completely hate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't want it that way, you know. I don't know why. I just don't want it that way.
Well, it absolutely guarantees that when the tank falls, it's going to hit the most fragile part, which is the glass. I mean, it has to. That's the bit that protrudes. So I just don't get it. Yeah.
Okay, recipes. I think an interesting one here, Folkart Boss Reserve. Who mixed that up?
I did. Okay, I never vaped the original Boss Reserve, but Folkart's recipe has drawn a lot of attention. And following on from that, Chris DVR also did his take on, not on Boss Reserve, but on Folkart's Boss Reserve. So I mixed up both recipes. They use very different routes to get to pretty much the same end profile. Boss Reserve is an extraordinarily complex profile. It's graham cracker, it's honey, it's nuts, it's milk, and it's banana. So there's a lot going on in that juice. Folkart got there with very few concentrates and very low total percentage of only 4.5%. He got there mainly with banana cream, with Flavora milk and honey, with acetyl pyrazine, and with a very small addition of Inawera biscuit. So it's a really sparse recipe. But for me, it works really, really well. And the surprising part about this is how prominently that TFA banana cream registers in the mix. I mean, I love banana cream. I use it in everything. But it's the sort of concentrate where I go in at 3.5%, 4% normally. Now, he comes in at 1.5%, which is an extremely light touch. But it balances so well with everything else. And he's just dialed everything down. Okay, the acetyl pyrazine at 1% is reasonably high as far as AP goes. The Inawera biscuit 0.25, that hardly registers at all. The Flavora milk and honey at 1.5 that's a decent percentage for that. And then just a couple of drops of cap super sweet. But it's an extraordinarily rich and flavorful recipe, particularly given that we're looking at a 4.5% total flavoring. Like I say, I haven't vaped the original Boss Reserve, but certainly as far as the profile goes, getting a graham cracker with honey, milk, nut, and banana notes, it's certainly all there. So it's a really finely balanced job. It's a job where I think he's gone literally as low as he could go with the total percentage and with the number of concentrates, and has done it really, really well. Then we look at Chris DVR's, which is just called Reserved, and it's the same profile but a very different technique. He is up at around 10% total flavoring. Also uses acetyl pyrazine. He uses TFA bananas Foster in place of banana cream, but at a much higher percentage, 3.5%, which is a good average percentage for bananas Foster. And then for me, the big difference between the two flavors, he adds 3% FW Bavarian cream, which moves the recipe in a very different direction. He's got 1.5% Jungle Flavors Dulce de Leche, which is kind of an equivalent of Flavora milk and honey. They do much the same sort of dark sweetening type of thing. And then he also adds 1% ethyl maltol, which made me nervous immediately because I don't like adding that to recipes. But for me, and perhaps I'm being a little bit unfair here because I haven't steeped it out properly, and any recipe with 3% Bav cream is going to need a steep. But the Bavarian is a little bit too prominent for me. It's starting to detract from that that Bosch Reserve profile. Everything's very downplayed in Folkart's version. Chris DVR's version, that Bavarian cream is front and center, and it's giving it that very characteristic trademark Bavarian cream sort of thickness to the recipe. I think it'll make a good juice. I've only had it steeping for a day or two, so it hasn't settled fully yet. I think it will be a tasty juice, but of the two, I would prefer Folkart's. It's more in line with, I think, the original profile, and it's more in line with what I want to see in a juice. But certainly interesting from both of them. It's a very difficult profile to nail, and I think they've both done an interesting take on it.
Yeah, I was quite surprised, like how much banana comes through on that Folkart's recipe, because
Absolutely.
it's low, like, and it's crazy. But there's something about it, but it reminds me a lot of Wayne's Yeo banana. When have you had that with sweet rice? Something about the sweet rice are very similar. I get like a very similar taste from the two, which makes me wonder. I think sweet rice might have like quite a bit of AP in it to get that almost like soy and nutty rice flavor. But yeah, it's a good recipe.
I think the magic ingredients in Folkart's one is the Flavora milk and honey. I think that is boosting the banana cream somehow, because I can't get 1.5% banana cream to register as prominently as he's getting it in this recipe, and I suspect it's the milk and honey that's bringing it out. So yeah, a good bit of magic there from Folkart.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you've got, excuse me if I don't pronounce this correctly, Hashlinging Slasher, Lech de Coco. Richard, did you mix that one up? Rich?
Sorry, I'm muted again. Yes, I did indeed mix up Hashtag Slasher's Lech de Coco. Very promising initially, but it does need a little bit of a steep. I've only had it steeping for 3 or 4 days, which is a little bit light for something with coconut and creams in it, and cheesecake graham crust and Bavarian cream. But it's a thick, sweet, very plain coconut milk, but it's a very difficult profile to get right. Coconut so easily goes off or gets chemical or perfumey, or it's too dry or it's too moist. And the early signals I'm getting from this is that it's just right. It's got the right level of moistness, it's got the right level of sweetness, and it's hanging together very well for me. I'll just give it maybe another 5 or 6 days just to settle. But I think we have a winner here. It's been very well received on ATF, and I can certainly see why. My initial take when vaping it has been promising. I think this is a winner here.
You love your coconut profiles, eh?
I love my coconut, and it's so difficult to find them because the TFA coconuts are very edgy. You know, if you go 0.5% too much on any of them, you just get suntan lotion. The FA is fine, but it's a little bit dry and bland. It just doesn't have that sort of dynamic juiciness and creaminess that I want from a coconut. This one, of course, the Flavora sweet coconut is the star of this recipe. The FA just backs it up. And again, initial impressions are that the Flavora sweet coconut is doing the business there. It's got winner flavors behind it as well. FA meringue, FA cream fresh, TFA Bavarian cream. You know, anytime you throw those in, you can end up with something that's decent.
Yeah, sweet coconut's like a nice like coconut. I definitely get like a bit of like a candy like aspect to it, like those, I think it's Raffaellos or Raffalos, just like the coconut bits on the outside of like a candy. Probably work great with like cheesecake graham crust, because I see it making that like tennis biscuit base.
Yeah, I'm not a huge cheesecake graham crust fan. I don't know. I just pick it up immediately in a recipe. It's not my favorite. I'm a New York cheesecake guy.
Speaking of which, I got in some Purelum New York cheesecake today.
Oh,
Which fear assures me is very, very good indeed. So I'll be giving that a try.
nice.
Oh,
It's
nice.
Capella New York cheesecake without the funky off notes. But you do need to use it quite high. It's Purelum stuff is not very strong, so 6-7% in a mix is probably about right for it. But I've been looking for a cheesecake that doesn't have off notes, and everybody tells me Purelum is the one to get. So we'll give it a shot and see how it goes.
Cool.
Daniel, you want to talk about Quik?
Yes, so I've mixed up Quik, which is it's supposed to be like a strawberry milk or malted milk, a lot like Nesquik. Yeah, I'm through my bottle now. Like this is like the last little bit I have left, which is also happens to be one of my favorite mixes because I no longer have any more creamy yogurt left because I don't like creamy yogurt. So it's good. I do like it. I must say, like it needs that 5 days. Off the rip, it's pretty good, but I think Rudy mentioned as well, it dies out at like day 3, where it's not the same thing, but yet about day 5 onwards. So this one's exactly 5 days or 6 days. This will be 6 days today, and it's good, but again, it's not Nesquik. I think it's a close representation of Nesquik. I think it's going to be very difficult to get a Nesquik profile, but it's good. I mean, it's cap sweet 5%, TFA strawberry at 2%, which is already like a killer combo. I dig that combo a lot. And then it's TFA Bavarian cream at 0.5%, vanilla custard TFA at 2%, cap creamy yogurt at 4%, TFA malted milk 0.5%, FA butterscotch 0.5%, and of course, the greatest invention, cap super sweet at 0.5%. Now, it's great, but I don't like creamy yogurt. I tasted a lot of things. I get a very like sour note from it that I don't enjoy vaping. So I've done a similar one after this, where I made 100 mils, which is also done now. What I did was I took out the creamy yogurt. I upped the Bavarian cream to 2% instead of the 0.5%, and I added cream fresh in at 1%. And that seemed to give me the same malted milk note that they were going for, but without that sour get from creamy yogurt. But it's good.
I'm going to be mixing up a variation of this that uses FW yogurt.
That's interesting.
I ordered that in today. I've heard that it's not, doesn't have quite that same funky note that the cap has. It's the note is a lot more muted. It's not that very yogurt forward note. It's more like just a cream that doesn't have that very tangy yogurt note. So I'm thinking that might actually be a good sub in there. But any recipe that uses cap creamy yogurt at 4%, I'm going to try, because like you, I don't really like it, and I want to use that bottle. That is not a flavor I'm going to be buying again.
What role does that butterscotch play in there?
So he says with the butterscotch and the malted milk, it adds the maltiness, and he's right. I've tried using that, a variation, other things. You definitely get a maltedness from it, but that maltiness comes out with the Bavarian cream. There's like a little bit of a nuttiness, maltiness with TFA Bavarian cream, that with those three together, you get a very good malted note. Like a malted note milk. It's definitely going into like a couple of my strawberry milk bases that I'll be swapping out, like my other favorite strawberry combo, which we'll talk a bit about later on. But that's a very good combo to get a malted note.
I must actually try that then, because I'm making a Horlicks, and it's built around Claralink's Cerelac, which might sound odd, but it's a honey cereal. Now, Horlicks has got that sort of honey note in it, And it's also got that graininess and grittiness, which comes out in the Cerelac. But what I need is that malted note just to sit with the Cerelac and just to drag it into Horlicks rather than a cereal. So I must actually try that.
I know Joel mentioned that FA gives that malted note as well. Now, I'd be interested to see how that works, like with all of those, because I think he had a bit of like a Horlicks recipe. It wasn't a finished product, but what he shared was that percent FA honey gives that like malted milk note as well. So it's worth looking at if you're looking at developing the profiles, trying to get FA honey.
I've tried with FA honey. It doesn't quite nail it for me. What I like about the Cerelac is that it adds texture. You know, Horlicks needs texture. It's not a smooth drink. It's like a gritty drink. So you need a little bit of that grit in there. And the Cerelac absolutely nails that for me. I'm getting that sort of soggy, mushy, but gritty texture that you get from Horlicks, but it's missing that malt note.
Yeah, one of my favorite Claralinks concentrate is Cerelac. You know, at the point in time where everybody was raving about cereal vapes, I didn't even know what it was. I just bought it, and then started smelling it, and I thought, okay, this would work well with some milk. You know, mixed it up with some malted milk and dairy milk, and I got exactly what I wanted. I got like a cereally, milky, you know, vape, which was pretty good with a little bit of sweetener in there. You know, much better than any of the other. How can I say? Not better than everything, but I thought, you know, for what I had put in the mix, I thought Cerelac worked really well.
It's a really potent flavor. You know, there's no such thing as a little Cerelac. You put in 0.5% into a recipe, it's registering. But it's an interesting flavor. It's got sort of like a honey pro neutro vibe to it, but a very pronounced honey note, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, blends nicely with milks. You know, so I like to, if I want to make a cereal vape, I use dairy milk, and then a little bit of Cerelac, a little bit of malted milk, and then I'm good to go. You know, that gives me a creamy cloud. Done.
I use Zac milk in mine. That is worth picking up, I tell you. As a milk, it's pretty good. It's just a glass of whole full cream milk.
And this, Daniel, you've got OOO milky undertone.
Yeah, that's milk. That for me is like proper 2% milk, but 2% it's low fat milk. It's like basically like skim milk, which I get like it's got a bit of that like wateriness that you get from skim milk. It's not as full as a full cream glass of milk, but it's a good milk. It's my favorite milk. If I look at adding milk to something, in like a cereal, I use OOO cream milky undertones.
Awesome. Okay.
It also does that.
Do you guys want to move? Sorry, you were saying, Daniel?
Yeah. I was saying that OOO milk, it adds a bit of like a texture on your mouth. It feels like it's got that, you know, like what sticks on your palate. Milk like usually sticks to your palate. Cream milky undertones does that as well, which is quite interesting.
Cool. So yeah, let's move over to notes. I just want to go and fetch something. Rich, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I have mixed up Flavora Boysenberry, 10 ml tester there. I mixed it up at 1%. And this for me is a very, very good candy berry. I was expecting an authentic style of berry. It's not authentic, it's candy, but it's candy in the best possible way. It's a thick, dark, syrupy, flavorful berry. It's going to go very, very well with a lot of other berries. It's got a fairly neutral feel to it, so it's going to fit with something that's either tart or that's sweet. And I can see myself using this a lot in berry vapes where I'm not going for an absolutely authentic berry, but where I want that nice, juicy, syrupy, rich darkness in a berry to complement, whatever other flavor I'm looking at. Very impressive flavor. I was hoping it might be mulberry because I've been on the lookout for a mulberry flavor. It's not quite, but it does have that sort of dark, that dark richness that you want in a black or in a dark berry. So, Flavora Boysenberry, very worthwhile.
Yeah, I've been, in one of the previous episodes, I've been talking about 27 Bears and how it had a pineapple note to it, and how I wanted to boost that pineapple note with Cap Golden Pineapple. So I did that, and I mixed it up with a little bit of super sweet because I was looking for a nice sweet pineapple. But even after a week of steep, now I know that because I've tried 27 Bears on its own, and I put pretty much sweetener and everything, so it's not those two. But for some odd reason, this golden pineapple is a little bit harsh for me, So I'm not sure if has anybody else tried this guy?
I haven't. I don't enjoy pineapple vape, so.
Golden pineapple. Yeah, for me it's a bakery pineapple. It's not really candy. I would use that in a cheesecake or pineapple upside down cake, something like that. It seems to work better with bakery textures and flavors than it does with candies or beverages.
It definitely didn't work too well as a candy, so anybody wanting to try that, don't, rather do something else, find inspiration somewhere else. Then I also tried Blue Raspberry Flavor West, and when I got this, I was thinking about Slush Puppy, the raspberry Slush Puppy, the blue one, but it doesn't taste like that at all. It's not bad. If you just go for it, if you just do the back of the hand test, right? It's quite harsh. But when I mix this up with a little bit of Cap Jelly Candy and 0.5 Super Sweet to see what it does, because I thought after the back of the hand test it wants some sweetener, and it does work well as a candy. However, it feels like it's when I expect the berry to be quite of a top note, and it doesn't feel like when you're vaping it you're getting it all the way through, so it doesn't sit very high. I try to put in a little bit of lemon lime at 0.5% just to see if I can widen that profile. Also just trick the mouth a little bit, for something interesting, and it didn't really do much in there. I could only taste the blue raspberry, but definitely something I'm going to be playing around with a little bit more. I think you would have to be careful with this one. I think it can easily overpower a mix completely. I haven't seen how it goes over time, so I'm interested to see if it lasts in a mix or not. But yeah, not a bad one, especially if you're into berries. I think this is definitely worth picking up, but it wants a little bit of sweetener.
Cool.
If you're into that blue raspberry profile, another interesting one to try is the Nick Vape. I wish Nick Vape would be stocked again. I mean, it was only Vaporite that was stocking it. None of the major DIY vendors were stocking it, and it's actually a pretty decent line. I bought 6 or 7 of them, and they're all decent. You know, I didn't get any bombs from any of their flavors, so it's a line that I'd like to experiment a little bit more with, but unfortunately it's very difficult to get hold of. But they do seem to be quality flavors. Probably about FW TFA strength, 4-5% is what you're looking at as a top note, and a decent value. So I'll play around a bit with that blue raspberry and maybe report back on a future program about how well it works.
Yeah. I mixed mine up at 3.5%, right? And the jelly candy in there was only at 0.7, super sweet at 0.5, and it's actually, you know, I put in a little bit of WS23 in at 20%. I put in 1%, and there's nothing wrong with that vape, you know. But I'll also put in lemon and lime, you know, just to put a different spin on it. But yeah, it definitely is a recipe that I'm still working on. But yeah, at 3.5%, it's pretty potent. Eh? This blue raspberry. It's the only thing I actually taste.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't played around with too many blue raspberries besides Liquid Barn. I do have this Flavor West one, but I've never, it's like on a backlog. It's unopened and I'm waiting to mix it up. So I'm interested to see how I could make it work as a raspberry flavoring. But I think it needs like more raspberry boosting from what I've read. I'll definitely try it out. And then, yeah, Rich?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I talk about my flavors? So I mixed up strawberry real flavors, strawberry super concentrate, and I've also got juicy strawberry from Flavor Art, which I mixed up to talk about, and then I can talk about the differences between the two and why that's my new like strawberry stone, if I'd like to call it that. It's my combo. So juicy strawberry from Flavor Art is a lot like strawberry ripe, but with sweet strawberry. It's almost like the two got together. So you get a lot of that like almost sugar around the strawberry, that like it's been drizzled in sugar. And then you get that body that Cap sweet strawberry brings. And then, so it's got a almost like a half authentic, half sugar strawberry, where Real Flavors strawberry super concentrate is very syrupy. It's a lot more like the syrup that you drizzle over ice cream. But when the two are put together, I get a very candied strawberry. So my current combo with both of them, depending on the mix, is like 1-to-1. So I'll do 2% strawberry, juicy strawberry, and 2% strawberry from Real Flavors. And then I'll get that strawberry. But if I want something like Nesquik, where Nesquik is very milk forward, with like sugar, milk forward, and then strawberry as like a background, then I drop both percentages down to 1% each with a heavier milk. So my next recipe that I'm working on is taking that with the malted milk that you get from Quik and combining that to get a strawberry milk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you just now that we're talking about strawberries and Quik. Did you mix up Boog and Shizzle's one milk to rule them all?
Did that one have Inawera Shisha strawberry?
Yes.
Then no.
Okay.
There's something about that flavor that I just don't get along with. I've definitely seen it, but I taste like a green stem or like grass note from it. And it's very distracting. So like a lot of like commercial juices I taste where it's like a strawberry and they use that, then I'm like, oh, I know exactly what flavor you're using because I can taste the green stem and I know it's that one, you know. I don't work well with that like the volatiles that they're using in that, even though I hear a lot of people going, oh, this is the best strawberry ever. It doesn't work with me well. But again, it was strawberry ripe for like before I taste like I've tasted what strawberry ripe tastes like, but as my like nose has developed or something, I now taste apples from strawberry ripe. I can no longer vape strawberry ripe because it tastes like apples. It's crazy.
Yeah, because
I like
Richard,
I like shisha strawberry. I'm not crazy about one milk to rule them all. I mean, it's okay, but it's it's not the best strawberry milk I've had. It's a decent recipe, but
yeah, because
I just wish I could taste it.
for me, I
Without
enjoyed that. I enjoyed that recipe quite a bit. So I'm rather interested in this strawberry RF and juicy strawberry FA combo that you're talking about. That seems interesting.
new strawberry combos are always good.
Yeah.
But I also Stephen had bought from Vaporite. He bought strawberry shisha because he tried 1 mil to rule it all from me, and he wanted to mix up exactly the same juice, and he did that. And he said, he brought it to me one day and he said, taste this, and I'm not sure what it was, but that shisha just tasted completely different to the batch that I have in my cupboard over here. I'm not sure if it was the shisha, but the recipe as a whole. And then he tried another recipe that contained shisha, and it still tasted a little bit bizarre for me. So I'm not sure what that was all about. But his shisha strawberry is not tasting exactly the same as mine.
I wonder if it's a consistency issue. I know I'm not the only one that gets grass from it. Like I think Wayne's mentioned he gets grass from it as well, and Joel mentioned it's grassy. There are like situations where it works. Like if you can mask that note with like a bakery, it seems to go away, but it's like very low, like 0.25%. Anything higher than that, I get grass.
Okay, is there any specials that you guys want to talk about?
I believe Valley Vapor has dropped their prices now. I don't know if it's a special, but it's definitely a price drop, which is worth mentioning. So they've basically come down to the same market as the rest of the guys, except now obviously the budget guys that are much cheaper, they have dropped their prices.
Yeah, it's I think TFM also came down quite a bit. What are they sitting at? What was it? 24 Rand 50, right? For 10 mils, I think, on cap and TFA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and FA.
And FA.
And FA is at 24.50. Yeah.
We seem to be settling on the 24 to 25 Rand range for FA, TFA, FW, and around about the 28 to 30 Rand range for cap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, guys. That's the end of the show. Thanks for joining.